What up is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads, where we do daily Dynasty football. Now, we are doing the top 5 tight ends, just like we did the top 5 wide receivers and running backs in separate videos, so you can find those. They were just done in the last couple of weeks. My number 1 tight end, though, stick around, is not Travis Kelce, so you get to find out who it is if you go through the video here. So my number 5 tight end is a man who is 23 years young. So he's a super young guy, but it's TJ Hockenson. And I understand that he just got a new quarterback in Jared Goff. But what Jared Goff does like is he likes tight ends. And he had Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. Well, there is no other B to TJ Hockenson. There's just TJ Hockenson. So I could see him being force-fed a ton in this offense. And even if he just improves a little bit on last year. We're talking last year was 723 and 6 touchdowns. Let's just say he gets up into that 850 and maybe 850 and 8. We are talking about a consistent, really good tight end for the years to come. I mean, because Jared Goff probably isn't leaving there anytime soon. They just invested into kind of this rebuild season. And also, that Galladay is going to be gone. Marvin Jones is going to be gone. Probably. Are they going to get another wide receiver? And this is a full rebuild. They're going to be using a lot of Swift. And they're going to be using a lot of TJ Hockenson. I think that is going to be the primary target, and they're going to find a lot of ways to get him involved. And so I could easily see him get a 1,000-yard season. They also have a new coach and a new QB, like we talked about, Jared Goff. And when you have that, that could have some different variability, some issues that might be in the beginning of the season. So if you do see Hockenson start off a little slow because they're trying to get the groove going, and we don't know how the offseason with COVID is going to be, then TJ Hockenson might be one of those at week 4 if you see that he starts to be slow. But he had 101 targets and 67 catches. So that's a little bit concerning because he was targeted a ton. And if you're only catching 66, 67% of your targets, that can be slightly an issue, but hopefully, Jared Goff stays healthy through the season. And I know Matthew Stafford was banged up. They had some Chase Daniels issues. I mean, ultimately, Detroit's been a mess. So hopefully I said that hopefully 5 times, but hopefully TJ Hockenson can get going and keep rising because he had an okay freshman year. A decent sophomore year like he did last year, and then junior year, third year breakout. That's what we're going for. Number 4, Mark Andrews. Personally, people think he had a down year, and he did, but he was 4th in the scoring. So, I mean, we talk about, oh my goodness, he had a down year and he's 4th. The year previous, he was 2nd. And the biggest thing about Mark Andrews is, A, they're not in a passing offense. They're in a rush-heavy offense, of course, at Baltimore. B, we don't know what really we're getting out of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's shown inconsistency, and at times he has shown to almost be able to throw it to anybody. I mean, there's times he throws it 100 yards a game or 150 yards a game. That leaves a tiny little sample size of receiving. You know, a lot of times Mark Andrews is the opposite of the other 4 players, where the other 4 players rely a lot on yards. Mark Andrews relies a lot on touchdowns. He's had 17 in the last 2 years. So if you've had 17 touchdowns in the last 2 years, you have a chance where, in a world where Mark Andrews could only score 5 touchdowns, and he's not a top 4 tight end at the end of scoring of 2021. But I really like that he is still only 25 years old, and I do think Lamar will figure it out. I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll have a junior year back to where I think he's going to start figuring out, like he did with Marquise Brown towards the end of the year in 2020. I also think J.K. Dobbins will be in the backfield, and Gus Edwards. I think they're going to have more of a concrete base there instead of all these different moving parts that they had in 2020. So Mark Andrews is my number 4. Number 3 is going to be Darren Waller. The only reason why he isn't probably higher, slightly the problem is he's aging. He's 28 years old. I feel like he's only been in the league for 2 years, but he was a wide receiver for a while, and then he became a tight end, and then he became this breakout sensation, and he's really done amazing the last 2 years. 1,100 yards in back-to-back seasons. And we're talking about quarterbacks, Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota for a tiny bit, that are really not amazing quarterbacks. They do their jobs mediocre. I mean, we're talking fantasy quarterbacks in 15 to 20 range, probably Derek Carr. I mean, slightly. Sometimes he can have some weeks that he does decent, and then other weeks he just bombs out. But Darren Waller was the opposite of Mark Andrews, where Mark Andrews was number 2 in 19 and number 4 in 2020. Darren Waller was 4 in 2019 and fantasy number 2 in 2020. So they did the opposite. So realistically, they've both been 4-2 the last 2 years. Darren Waller's 3 years older. I just ultimately like the production of Darren Waller and the safety of knowing that he's going to be in a more pass-happy offense compared to what Lamar is, his riskiness of with Mark Andrews. And Mark Andrews doesn't play all the snaps like Darren Waller. They really focus Darren Waller in that offense, and I'm excited to see where that comes up, like how that keeps maturing and stuff like that. And I could see easily Waller with another 1,100 yards. And if anything I want to bank on, if it's yards versus touchdowns, I'm going to bank on the yards because the yards are more consistent. Touchdowns, they vary. You might have 15 one year, you might have 5. Kamara's a prime example of that, but wide receivers can do that too. Devontae Adams can have 8 and he can have 18. I mean, that can happen as well. But my number 2, which is most people's number 1, and realistically the only reason he's not number 1 is because he's 31 years old and we don't know how many more seasons we're going to get out of Kelce. If I were to guess, I would say 1.5. And why I say 1.5 is I'm assuming he's going to start 2021 hot. He's going to start 2022 decently, and then he's going to start to break down when he's getting into that 33 range. He's been tight end 1 or 2 the last 5 years, and tight end 2 one time of those 5 years. He was tight end 1 4 times. In some scoring format, he was tight end 1 all 5 times. So that's just incredible in itself. No one does this in fantasy football. No one gets number 1 in their position like 5 years in a row. That just doesn't happen in fantasy. Kelce is the most consistent player you will find, and he's had 1,200 yards in 3 straight years. He's had 34 touchdowns in the last 4 years. He scores touchdowns. He scores yards. He's not leaving Kansas City. He has Pat Mahomes. Ultimately, he should be number 1 if he was 29, but he's 31. So we don't know how long we're going to have with him. And so what you've all been waiting for is probably the number 1 tight end. And it is a little bit controversial, but it's George Kittle. I know that the quarterback is a question. I literally just heard that Jimmy G might get traded to my Minnesota Vikings. Please don't have that happen. Please keep Kirk. Keep Kirk. Don't get Jimmy G. Don't Vikings fans. I mean, or just spiel and don't. But anyways, George Kittle, we don't know whose quarterback's going to be. There's been rumors that they've been wanting to draft a rookie. They want to trade for somebody. They already potentially want to go after Kirk. But in 8 games, we're talking 634 yards, and he only had 2 touchdowns. Kittle's biggest problem and why he hasn't fought Kelce for the number 1 spot, well, at least the last year or 2 here, is because of injuries. But I trust when Kittle is healthy, you know what you're going to get. He is like tight end 2, basically, and you know he's going to have that longer than Kelce. So when I see Kelce, maybe 2 years-ish, I see Kittle maybe doing it for 4 or 5 years, and that's just the biggest difference. Kittle he's an amazing player, realistically. I understand he was a 5th-round draft pick, but Kittle is my number 1 player. It may change if all of a sudden, I'm trying to think how it would change. I don't think it would change. Now that I think of it, I was thinking if they even drafted a rookie quarterback, would that change? He's had trash at quarterback. Ultimately, San Francisco fans comment like you guys have not had a good quarterback play, and it's been a little while. So I think Kittle stays here. I think anything, if he has good quarterback play, his value would go up even more. Biggest concern is just injuries, so he just needs to stay healthy. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads, where we do Dynasty daily. If you have a comment, if you wanted me to do any videos that you have an idea of, we'll continue. We're going to try to do this, again, every day throughout the summer here. Well, winter, spring, then summer. Stick around because rankings and stuff will definitely change with a lot of free agency. You got to keep up to date because things can happen. If trades are going on right now in your league, if you're 2 steps behind, then you're probably 2 steps too late, and we want to be ahead of things. It's never too late to just dive into a bunch of different videos, whether it's my channel or a bunch of other channels as well. I think it's an awesome idea to just get your brain, all these different analysts, experts, whatever you want to call them, and just find what you tune in best to and go from there. All right, well, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. We'll see ya.